All right, so good afternoon. Thanks again for sticking around and listening to me espouse my little golden nuggets of wisdom. This is the question and answer phase. So we're going to open it up to the audience first. If they've got questions that need to be asked, I'd ask that you raise your hand. Tell me what kind of dog you have, and then the question. All right, who wants to go first? If you don't go first, I'm going to read questions. Yeah. That starts from the conditioning point. That's why we use, especially for our young dogs, we start with conditioning them to a crate. That way when they're young, they don't get a chance to go out and pee in the house. I don't care what you mark outside as long as it's not my car. But for the most part, yeah, it's conditioning until the dog cannot do something that he has never done before. With that crate training, also with puppies, we begin with just tethering them to us everywhere we go. That way we always have our eye on them. One of the biggest mistakes people make when house training their dogs or getting their dogs in the beginning is they give the dog too much freedom. And the dog then goes over without you knowing it because you got your eye on something else, and the dog pees. Well, now you got rep number 1. And then you take the dog outside, the dog doesn't pee or anything, so you got no reps there. Now you come back in the house, you take your eye off for a minute, he goes and poops again. Now you got rep number 2. You take him back outside, he doesn't do anything. Why? Because he already went in the house. Right? So there's more reps of the unwanted behavior than there is of the wanted behavior. That would lead me to a conversation about what's right and wrong with a dog. And one of the things we talk about a lot is that there really is no morality in the dog world. There is no right and wrong. And we get stuck in these kind of mindsets because of our human conditioning, that somehow the dog did something wrong when he pees in the house, and therefore they must be punished. Well, where do you guys pee? In the house, I hope. Right? Inside, you've been conditioned to go and pee in a porcelain bowl. All right, that's been our conditioning. But when you were young, how did your parents create that condition? Kept taking you back to it, kept taking you back to it, kept taking you back to it. You didn't. Hopefully, you didn't beat your kids or rub their nose in it when they peed somewhere they shouldn't. All right. So it's a conditioning process, it's a training process, and the best way to do that is to avoid the unwanted ones first, and that's why we use crates and tethering in the beginning. Then eventually, yeah, so even Samson, who will mark anything outside, he comes in the house, does not mark. He's never, ever had that opportunity, so therefore he doesn't think that's even a possibility, and it doesn't feel right in their bones, because you go, this is where I pee. They walk outside and they get on the grass. You'll start noticing, you put your dog on the grass all the time, pretty soon. About the only place sometimes your dogs will pee is on grass. There's very few dogs. And I make sure I work my dogs on all surfaces outside. So because of the work we do and stuff like that, they sometimes have to pee and poop on a concrete surface, which is totally foreign to a dog. All right? So you have to train them because they'll feel something on their feet and go, this is where I go. Or that smell that they get to and go, this is where I go. So again, it's a conditioning process and understanding that whatever you want your dog to do in the future, you do it when they're young. All right. Next question? Yes?
I have a pit mix. She's 6, and we've had obedience and such training. But on our walks, at one time I did nose work just because I thought it would be fun for her. But now when we walk, her nose has to smell every freaking blade of grass on the walk.
Yeah.
And it's 30 minutes turned into 2 hours.
Yeah. And in reality, it is not natural for a dog when they are walking to sniff. Again, that is a learned behavior that we have somehow done. And sometimes in nose work that can happen because the dog is doing it to find its reward, so therefore it doesn't understand the context of when it's supposed to sniff. Samson was trained in narcotics also, so Samson and I were flying one time, and we're sitting in line waiting for our turn to get on the plane. Samson looks at this piece of luggage, and like he's been trained to do 1,000,000 times, he sniffs all the way around the seam of the luggage. I'm like, don't find anything, don't find anything, don't find anything. Yeah, and the people are getting worried too. One guy's like, "Hey, I promise I don't want to. I'm not writing the report." But the point is, yeah, that's what they get trained to do. And the secondary act to that is sniffing is a self-rewarding behavior. How do you get a dog to do something you want them to do? You reward them, right? Sit, good dog. And they go, oh, food, that feels good. Well, when they sniff, that's self-rewarding too, because if they didn't sniff in their natural environment, they would starve to death. It's part of survival. How do you find your food? You sniff. Yeah. So it feels good every time they do it. It's releasing oxytocin into their bodies. But when we're walking, when we're migrating, that's not the time to do it. When I was an officer in Dos Palos, I used to get to sit and watch a lot of dogs who were just not really feral, but they didn't live anywhere. And little packs of dogs. It was an agricultural town. And so many times with nothing else to do, I'd sit there and I'd watch them. And they would, watch them move from place to place. And those little packs of dogs, when they walked, everybody was doing this. And they're looking side to side. They're air scenting, but they're not tracking. And they're looking, and everybody's moving at a good, quick pace. So any of my clients who ever worked with us knows one thing I'm always pressing is pick up your pace. Yeah, if you're walking slow, you're hunting. If you're walking quickly, you're migrating. So yeah, the other fact of that is as they all moved, they would get to the place where they were going to lay down, then they would take their time sniffing everything. Whether it was for possible food or marking an area, seeing who was there before, those kind of things were going on. And then they, the ones who wanted to rest would rest. The other ones who wanted to mess around would mess around. But when they were moving from the one place to the next, they didn't do any sniffing. And the one thing I never saw in all that time was at the end of that migrating, that one of their dog leaders came out and said, here's a treat for you, here's a treat for you, here's a treat for you. It just didn't happen. So there has to be some kind of consequence to the behavior. So if one of those little dogs out in Dos Palos started getting sideways, getting off, what do the other dogs do? Hey, get back over here. So there was a consequence or something uncomfortable. In our case, we used food to get their heads back up. Hey, why do you need to sniff? I got food right here. Put your head down, leash tug, right up here. That's uncomfortable, this is amazing. You start giving the dog a choice. Where do I really need to be? Because it becomes a habit. And that dog's just so habituated to it. And then you add to that, what do? She pulls you to that spot. And then you stand there while that does this thing. Like, okay, I'm moving over here now. And they pull you to the next spot. Who's walking who? All right? Even if you go, well, I'm slowing you down and I'm kind of bringing you here, the dog still says, oh, I'm getting there. Now you've added to that through negative reinforcement, pressure on, pressure on, pressure on, reward, pressure off. Or behavior you want, pressure off. That's negative reinforcement, right? So your dog learns the harder I pull, the sooner I can get to my reward. Or this is how I get to my reward. So we're actually training the dog, increasing the desire, because anything that's a reinforcement is designed to increase a behavior. So negative reinforcement increases this behavior. I want you to go sniff. I'm just going to make it a little bit harder, a little bit harder. Oh, you did it. Oh, good dog. So you're rewarding your dog without even knowing it. All right. Next question. Yes.
I'm Katie, the little black and white one. Why can't I just let me on the couch whenever he feels like it on the couch and snuggling me?
Ask your husband. Petey had... Originally, Petey had some certain behaviors that, created some unwanted or negative behaviors in life that we were having. So in the beginning, it was absolutely important for Petey in that instance to understand that all great things come from us humans. We needed engagement. A lot of Petey's original imprinting in his life was do what you want, and handle your situations the way you feel fit, whether that would be by fear or whatever it was going to be. And so for him to start to understand that, hey, everything comes from my human, and if I look at my human, boogeyman goes away. So that part of that, if I'm remembering back correctly, I think that was part of it. Was just no, make sure that you're doing it. I'm not the type that teaches people their dogs cannot get on the furniture, and I don't even care if your dog is on the furniture without permission, unless there's a behavioral issue that's associated with it. Growling at someone else who's getting up there, resource guarding the seat, resource guarding you, those kind of things. My dogs have a kind of a hybrid of approach for their allowance on the furniture. If their blanket is on the couch, they're allowed on it. If it's not, they don't go on there. So they get I put their favorite blanket out. Well, the only downside of that is my little English bulldog, who's extremely intelligent, grabs her own blanket and throws it on the couch and gets up there. So there's a downside to everything about having a smart dog. All right. So does that answer the question? So that would be why. But it's when we have a behavioral issue we're trying to do, we want to make sure that we're black and white with giving the proper signals to the dog. Then we need to be black and white in the whole approach to it. Otherwise, the dog's left with gray areas, which ends up being more confusing than the first. All right.
We have some people who've come in on Facebook and Instagram to ask questions.
Oh, hello,
So
Facebook.
I'm gonna bring some of those in. One of the questions was from Georgie and Neo. She says, hey, maybe you have some tips. What will be the process for Rabbit and High Energy Puppy to get along? Both are interested in each other. Rabbit is not running away, so the puppy's not trying to chase him. But the puppy still wants to put everything in his mouth and gets very excited when the rabbit is out. 4, almost 5-month-old puppy and 6-year-old rabbit. And that's all the information you have.
A rabbit. They put those things on sticks and make them go 60 miles an hour around a track in Florida, and what does the dog do? I mean, that's a tough one, depending on the drive of the dogs, but you are asking for trouble. There is no reason for them to be friends. They're two different species, and they were not designed to be together. I mean, that's like keeping me away from a steak. It's just not a good plan, especially if I'm hangry. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it, it's through engagement of both. Can you keep the rabbit engaged with you? Can you keep the dog engaged with you while you're making them do separate things? I mean, it's the same process you would use to introduce the dog into your home. Gradual integration through engagement with the human. And we're going to talk a lot, I'm sure, throughout today about what that looks like, about engagement with the human to make sure that you are indeed the most important thing in the dog's world, and everything else is secondary.
Anyone feeling asked to go before I get one of our other online questions?
Yeah, Rob, what can I do with my goat?
I assume that's Bob.
A lot of you have heard this story because I bring it up all the time. My mom has had 2 dogs in a row who are imprinted on barking at people. The first dog had it bad, little silky terrier. You couldn't move. I couldn't reach my hand up without barking. And so they brought a second dog in. This first dog taught the second dog how to do it as well. And every time I would sit there and I'd tell my parents, I know this really good dog trainer. Oh, it's okay. He only does it with you. And my brother and the kids. But see, what do you do? I mean, at this point, what do you do? You know, in her situation, we have a dog who's been so imprinted on this behavior. About the only way you would get it to not do this is, you know, some of the more inventive therapies, like taking the dog, living in a different home each week, learning it to be comfortable around many different environments and people that they go, oh, all the people all the time. But again, it goes back to it's a problem with the small dog because the dog just bark, and runs. And now the threat's not near me, so barking and running is the way I deal with the threat. So again, we go back to tethering. The dog's with me. The dog goes to bark. No, we're not going to bark. You know, and the dog goes, oh. And then creating, you know, where the dog goes, well, then what do I do? Nothing. Then it's got to be set up in very sequential, incremental ways where coming in, bark, nope. And she goes, wait a minute. The problem is we all come in, every time, all the way we break threshold. And so their training at that point is unrealistic and impossible. It has to be very minute, very incremental. The door opens, bark, bark, bark. She hasn't seen anybody yet. Correction. The dog goes, oh. And that person leaves while she's quiet. Come back in, bark, bark, bark. Correction. Oh. The same way we have to work through things like separation anxiety. It's just the reverse. I get up, the dog starts to, where are you going? I sit down. I get up, the dog goes, where are you going? I sit down. I get up, well, you're not going anywhere. Now I take a step, the dog goes, where are you going? I sit back down. it's one of the, we're going to go most mind-numbing behaviors to overcome is separation anxiety, and it requires a ton of patience. But it's the reverse problem in this case. So it takes the same kind of thing, but backwards. They come in a little bit, they leave. They come in a little more, they leave. They come in a little more, and it's hours of just mind-drumming, repetitive behaviors. So. All right. What's that?
She's better.
On that note, we're going to go to Teresa Ramirez online. She is asking, how can you safely socialize a dog if it's already showing signs of aggression towards other dogs and people?
One of the biggest fallacies, and I can't be emphatic enough about this, one of the biggest fallacies in the dog community right now is socializing your dog. Socializing your dog doesn't mean taking it to a party. It doesn't mean throwing it in with a bunch of people it's never met, a bunch of dogs it's never met, and expecting it to figure it out. That is going so sideways. The invention of dog parks and doggy socials and stuff shot my business in San Francisco through the roof. I mean, immediately I went from just going out and fixing dogs who want to eat people to fixing dogs who just barked and screamed at every other dog. And there was no aggression issue. It was just a dog was so overstimulated and so over-aroused because, here, say hi to this dog. Here, say hi to this dog. Socialization of a dog should be thought about more as engagement or exposure through engagement. I take my dog into a situation. The dog might be a little uncomfortable. I don't increase that discomfort. I'm going to work with my dog. I'm going to ask him to do the behaviors I've taught him at home. Sit. The dog sits. Reward. Good. Pretty soon everything's going on around the dog, and you're just engaging, whether it's through tug or play or anything. You need to be the most important thing in the environment. And then eventually all that stuff in the background becomes white noise. There's no reason on earth for our dog to go up to strange dogs. How many of you would let a stranger walk up and touch your kid? How many of you like every single person you meet? Why do people think that dogs want to meet every single dog? Why do they think dogs want to meet every single person? Some people give me the creeps. Well, a lot of people give me the creeps. And you know it right away. I don't even need to shake their hands. You just walk up and go, ew. And if you think we're good at it, imagine your dog who's all about body language, energy, and scent. Right? So there's no reason for your dog to say hi to everybody. And if you're lucky enough to get a very gregarious dog like a Labrador Retriever, and that dog is fine in all situations with all people and all dogs, and you go say hi, say hi, say hi, say hi to everybody, and every person the dog makes, oh, look at that little puppy. Arousal. Oh my God, look. And then the other dog, whoa, 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 and they start playing together, and it's over-arousal. Well, then you're walking down the street, and you really want to get from point A to point B, but your dog can't think because, oh my God, I got to say hi. Oh my God, I got to say hi. Oh my God, and the dog's just looking. And that's actually the real leash reactivity that we talk about. Leash reactivity isn't based on aggression. Leash reactivity is screaming, barking, and lunging at the end of the leash because they cannot stand the fact that they cannot get over to what they want. That's true leash reactivity, and it's based on overstimulation in the imprinting time. I promise you, if you take a dog and you get it at 8 weeks of age, and the breeder's done a good job, or somehow, somewhere, the dog's, been in a decent environment for its first 8 weeks as well. You take that dog, and all you do is put it in a very controlled situation with you and them, where everything disappears, including other dogs. Have your friends' dogs and everything else training around you as well, and you're training with your dog. I guarantee you, after a year, when that dog hits a year, unless there's some kind of mental deficit, that dog will never react to another dog. My dog Samson never went to dog parks, never went to puppy socials, never did, and didn't say hi to everybody or anything else. And now when he gets out of the car, he runs over the tops of things to get to his human. Why? Because this is the greatest place on earth. This is Disneyland, where he gets to tug, he gets to do everything. Everything great happens here. Consequences of being out there. And now, if you were here earlier, you can watch him walk in, and he goes and says hi to every person he wants to in a very calm fashion. Walks up, pet me now. It's not about how much you socialize them. I can't press that enough. It's the bane of the dog training industry right now, and there's so many people. If you go through the internet, those of us who understand, the true dog psychology, are just screaming at the top of our lungs. Stop puppy socials. Stop group training classes. Stop all of these things, and start working with your dog. Stop taking your dog to dog parks. Stop taking your dogs to areas where your dog plays with other dogs. It's not necessary. The dogs don't pine for it when you're gone, but they get so happy when they get to the dog park. Sure, because you're coming down the street, the dog goes, oh my God, this is where I get overstimulated and over-aroused. Therefore, I must do it again. Because why? Because yesterday I did it, and the day before I did it, so therefore I'm going to do it tomorrow and the day after. Because that must be what you want me to be like. The dog's not thinking this is the greatest place ever. The dog's just associating a place with an energy level. All right? That make sense? All right. Next question.
Our next question was from someone who was here earlier, and it was regarding Samson, so I thought this might be a good time. They were saying they noticed that he is missing a toe during his performance earlier. They would like to know how he lost it and how does this affect him today?
I was really hungry. Last February, I noticed Samson walking with a limp. And I thought for sure he blew something, a CCL or something. I'm thinking, here's $6,000 for, there's no way, Got him over to the good people at Silverado Vet Hospital, Dr. Hess, and he was doing all the manipulations and all that on him, and, to check for anything that was orthopedic. And then he picks him up by his foot. Samson winches, and the doctor says, watch this. Touches the nail bed. Turns out Samson had nail bed carcinoma. Yes, you can get cancer in your nail beds. And the treatment for that is amputation of the toe, and then it goes out for biopsy, and then they make a determination if anything else has to happen. Fortunately for Samson, it was biopsied. It was malignant, but it hadn't gone any further than the nail bed at that point, so we caught it very early. Samson was doing bite work just 4 or 5 days later at our fundraiser last year. It hasn't affected him at all. There's not like people. They do not care if they've got 1 toe, 3 toes, 1 leg, 3 legs. They're not even thinking about it because they don't have that thought process or that ability to have that level of thought process. So that's it. Nail bed carcinoma.
Does everyone get a question in before I go to one of our other questions online? Yeah. Oh, you're waving. Just
Somebody's waving?
What is the difference between the 4 behavior quadrants?
The 4 behavior quadrants is where a lot of people get really, really confused. Positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishers, negative punishers. Reinforcers, positive and negative reinforcers, are designed to increase a behavior. Punishers are designed to decrease a behavior or extinguish a behavior. Problem we're having in the world right now is that the world thinks a punisher means you're mad. The word punisher never equated to emotional content. It was just something uncomfortable to diminish a behavior. A good example of that is if I go to reach for an open flame, what happens? I get burned and I go, dummy, don't reach for an open flame. That's a positive punisher. It stopped me from doing a behavior. Was a fire mad? No, there's no emotional content to it. So we get a whole group of people talking about, positive only. It is impossible to train a dog with positive reinforcement only. And my point to that, before anybody out there in YouTube land goes and starts keyboard warrioring this and telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, you become a punisher as soon as you go, doggy, sit, and the doggy says, no, and you go, sit, and the dog says, I'm sitting, you have just punished your dog. That term is a negative punisher. Positive reinforcement, you're adding something. The word positive means to add, right? It's a big plus sign. Positive reinforcement, I'm going to add something to the environment. You sit, I add food to your belly. Easiest way to understand it. In this case, because we took something out of the environment, that's a minus sign. It's a negative punisher. So anybody who tells you they are positive reinforcement only doesn't know anything about behavior modification. They're just chanting a mantra, a religious kind of mantra, because it's all based in emotion. Negative reinforcement is not punishment. There was a scene in Ghostbusters. Oh, and they did it in Big Bang. Aggravated the snot. These guys are supposed to be geniuses, and they're using the word negative reinforcement when they're talking about positive punishers. So Bill Murray's sitting there testing this girl. Y'all of age remember this movie. Ghostbusters, he's sitting there. He's a real pretty blonde, and this other college kid sitting next to her. And he says, we're doing experiments on the effects of negative reinforcement on ESP. So we'd hold the card up, and the girl would get it wrong, but he'd tell her she was right, and he'd reward her. Then he'd ask the guy to say what was on the card, and the guy, would get it right, but he said, nope, you're wrong, and he would zap him with electrical stimulation. That's not negative reinforcement. That's a positive punisher. Positive punisher means adding something to the environment, and that includes shaking rocks, a can of rocks at your dog, spray bottles, anything like that. Anything that adds something to the environment is a positive punisher, right? And on the same term, negative reinforcement, like we talked earlier about the dog who pulls on leash. And then they get there. I've increased the behavior. It's negative reinforcement. When we're training our police dogs really young on, when they're getting on that bite, and they get that bite on that sleeve or that tug, and we start dragging them off of it, and they bite down harder and harder, and if they get to the right grip, they re-grip, we let them have it. That's negative reinforcement. I want to increase the grip. I want to increase the bite drive. That's negative reinforcement. So those are your 4 quadrants of behavior modification. There is no one quadrant that works for every dog, and most dogs run all 4 quadrants at some point, just like some people. Did I need a lot of punishers? Absolutely. Negative reinforcement? I got a lot of that too. Well, let me see how I can sneak out this. Hey, it worked. Okay, I got out. Negative reinforcement just to increase my own behaviors. Bad example? I don't know. Mom will tell you. So the positive punishers, adding something to the environment. Leash pops, action collars, cans of rocks, anything like that. Your voice. As soon as you use your voice to correct your dog, that's a positive punisher. And then the other end of it with the reinforcements, positive reinforcement, adding something to the environment, negative reinforcement, releasing. Last example of negative reinforcement, lifting up on your dog's leash until his butt hits the ground. And you release the pressure. That's negative reinforcement. All right? So, enough on that. Did we get through our questions?
Oh, we have a lot more from people online and stuff. Anyone else have a question? Okay. What is the best way to engage with my 14-week-old Neapolitan Mastiff?
I don't know if y'all know what a Neapolitan Mastiff is, but they got the face that hangs down to here, and they're about 150, 160 pounds sometimes smaller. And we're supposed to be guarding dogs. Most of them now are bred to the point they have not a lot of energy, and that's why I laugh. They're not going to have a lot of prey drive. There's some that do. There's still some throwback dogs, but for the most part, they're not. So the best way to get that engagement is you got to find what makes a dog work. Whether it's high-value food rewards, whether it's wrestling. I had a Cane Corso that I ended up with and that's the Italian Mastiff, and I ended up with him because he wouldn't do the work. He couldn't do the work, so therefore the people didn't want to keep him because he wasn't a guarding dog. So I said, well, I'll take your dog. His way of reinforcement was play. The harder you pushed him away, the more he wanted to come back. It really tapped into the more Mastiff end of things, the bully end of things, where you're just pushing him away. So maybe just a good game of wrestle, where you push, make him come back, push, make him come back, where it's engaging to him. It could be a game of tug. If the dog has the drive to chase something, like a toy or a flirt pole, like you would use for a cat, burlap sack, something like that. Get the dog to chase, engage, that would be another way. Just really going to depend on what his innate drives are. Drives are there from the time they're born. We don't create drives, so you kind of get what you got when you're dealing with dogs.
Is it true dogs tuck their tail between their legs when they are scared?
Yes and no. It depends. I guess every question should start with it depends. Tail language is tough for a lot of people because they're just looking at a tail. When you look at dogs' body language, it's a totality of all the different elements in place. Where's their head position? Where are their ears? Where are their shoulders? Those kind of things all go into the considering factors, including the wagging of the tail. So some of you got to see Samson earlier. Samson, and it's a kind of a Malinois trait. When they come in to get pets, they tuck their tail. The reason for that is because the tucking of the tail is to block the anal glands odor. I don't want you to smell me. I don't want you to near me. I'm doing what I want to do right now. So they'll just block the tails to tell other dogs, I'm persona non grata right here. You're just get out of here. I'm just going to deal with whatever I've got going on. Sometimes it's, oh my God, I don't want to have this thing chase me or anything else, so they block the tail. Block the anal glands with the tail. The other end of that is wagging the tail. Not every dog who's wagging their tail is happy to see you. Again, totality of the body language. The dog who's overexcited, there's dogs who are aggressive and their tails are still wagging. I got video of two pit bulls going at it. It was an incident that happened while we were training some dogs out in San Francisco. And they got to each other, and the whole time that they are in the fight, their tails are going 1,000 miles an hour. So they could be telling other dogs, hi, come see me. Or a person or whatever, they could be expressing that. They're fanning that odor, going, hey, come on over. It's all good. Or, hey, you come over here. I'm going to eat your face. So it really depends on the rest of the body language.
And before I go on to the next one,
Hello, Moto.
tell us more about your trainers. What were their previous careers, and how did they all get started with NexGen K9?
So Samantha, the one who's reading the questions, Samantha started out working in the animal control field. That's how we met. We met through a particular dog who needed a rescue. We were introduced through Jameson Animal Rescue Ranch. They told Sam I'm the guy to call for that particular dog type. So she called, and kind of the rest is history. Over the past couple of years, I've just been working her, breaking her down every day to come work for me. And until eventually she did a little over a year ago. Dennis, the one you met with Petey, Dennis started out as a client with Petey and with Petey's issues. And it caused him to really want to investigate more. Heidi, who used to work for me, it was the same kind of thing. She started out as a client, a really aggressive Petey, started working. It was so exciting, and to see the behavior modification stuff and to see the changes that you can make in a dog's world. She too set out after a couple of years to figure out how to be a dog trainer. And so she ended up coming in doing an intern program with me. Dallas, well, not our latest intern, we got one more besides him. Dallas Petrie, whose dad Mark made the delicious barbecue. Thank you, Mark Petrie. Dallas's aunt actually reached out to me. So Mark and Shauna. Mark and Shauna are sister and brother. We all went to high school together. So she reached out saying that her nephew was interested in canine handling and this and that, was going to the military, but he would like to, know things, and would you mind if he called and picked your mind? And so from there, we waited a little while, and we got together, and he showed some interest and a good kid, so he's been learning a lot. He's the one who had the dog Booney out here earlier, the Rottweiler, who became everybody's favorite clown today. And then recently, another person from a shelter that we've worked with closely in Napa County, Sahadi, she has started her intern program as well. So, it's a mixed bag. Some of them are previous clients. Some of them are animal shelter people who want to go to the next level in animal welfare. And some people who have, a desire, then they don't know why. So.
Okay, Wendy would like to know, and you answered a little bit of this, how do you deal with separation anxiety? And then it says something about the first issues when walking with other dogs. Me first issue. My first issue. Separation anxiety.
Separation anxiety, like we talked about earlier, it's a very slow, methodic, incremental rehabilitation. Many times just working with the dog slowly but surely, increasing it. It's a tough way to go. There are some people who actually specialize just in that end of it. But it is gradual desensitization to your movement. The biggest thing that causes separation anxiety with dogs is overbonding. The dog is allowed to be with you every minute of every day. The dog doesn't do anything without you, goes everywhere with you. And then when you go away, the dog doesn't know how to act because it's so overbonded. This happens a lot with people who are convalescing. They come out of a surgery or they got in an accident and they've got a year-long convalescing, or vice versa, the dog was sick and so therefore needed constant attention from their human. And it's an overbonding situation. Some of it's a trained response because every time we leave, we go, okay, baby, we'll see you later now, okay, and then I run out the door. Right? All those high-pitched tones are to tell your dog, come see me. And then you leave. So you start creating the dog who sits at the door going, what the heck just happened? So some of it can be, trained by you. Some of the things you can do also, depending on the severity of separation anxiety, is just start by creating a new routine. If your morning routine is putting your shoes on, getting up, brushing your teeth, and your dog starts panicking when you pick up your toothbrush, change your routine. Do one before the other. Change the time in which you get up, just by a few minutes here and there. You wouldn't be surprised if you watch your morning routine tomorrow, how routine it really is and how clockwork it really is for most people. They do the same things over and over, and the dog gets tied into that routine. So that's why I don't ever let my dogs eat at the same time every day. There's always something different. They don't always eat in the same exact place. They might eat here. They might sleep in the house. They might sleep in their kennel. They might sleep over here. That way, whenever something different has to happen, the dogs go, just another day, because every day is different. That's what you really want to try to do for your dog. Okay? Yes?
On that same note with anxiety, there's this new era of CBD oil. I mean, how does that compare to prescription veterinarian drugs?
So far, everything I have on CBD is anecdotal. There really is no empirical data on this use, and because of the variance and the potency and where it comes from and how it's manufactured, there's no structured thing like narcotics are. There's nothing 100% to say. I've had clients who've had good luck with it. It's helped some dogs. I've tried it on 10, 12 different dogs now. Not seen a lot of change. I keep asking clients when they have used it what they do. Most of them, it's a brand and it's maximum dosage. They don't go to the minimum dosage. They go right to the maximum dosage. The nice thing about CBD, unlike other narcotics, is it doesn't have the crazy side effects that things like Prozac and Xanax and all the other serotonin inhibitors will have. So I would tell anybody, I would shoot with that first. Give it a try. It might work for you. It might not. It's not 100%, just like anything in the herbal market. Somebody believes it works, therefore it must work.